name's Greg. I'm a consultant. I'm a principal consultant here at Collectiv. We're going to go through Calculate, kind of get an understanding of what it is, how you can actually use it, and how it actually works. The next measure I'd like to show you is basically this average price, more of an advanced filter, which is what this visual down here is using. So this Calculate function is basically using two filters. So the first filter, again, is what we looked at beforehand, where we filtered our data set down to the Dow equal to 30. But the second one of what we're doing is we're actually filtering down the data set to basically show our dates between that are basically the first 3 months. So we're basically showing the average close of our stocks for just Dow 30 and then just the first 3 months. So as you can see here, I have this other filter that basically says, show it so it's just the first greater than or equal to of month 1 and then greater than or equal to month 3. So when we do that and we calculate that out, that also shows us this value here instead. So if we would look at our data set, essentially it's analyzing this date column to just show us the first month, basically the first 3 months of that year. So it applies the Dow 30 filter, and then it goes ahead and it applies another filter, basically showing you those first 3 months, and then it runs our function against this data set. That's essentially how those are essentially a couple ways how you can actually run that calculate function. This is just a simple sales table, sales data that shows quantity versus total sales. So in this example, you can see we have a total sales amount. So a very common calculate function that you want to use calculate for is you may want to look at last year's data, or you may want to look at 2 years ago or last month's. And the way we do that is we use the calculate function. And this may seem like an easy function to put together, but if you just kind of think about it in this concept where you're applying your filtering first, that filtering is then going to affect the function that you're putting in. That's going to help you as far as when you think of that order of operations, as far as what that calculate function is doing and how you can actually then come into more advanced type of calculate problems. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the common measure that's just going to show us total sales for last year. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that total sales last year. What I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to say calculate. What I could do is I could actually just sum my sales price right here, but instead of doing my sales price, I'm just going to reference my total sales measure. So I'll call that total sales. And in this instance, I can use something called the same period last year. So that's one DAX equation I can use to apply a filter, but I'm just more accustomed to using the date add function. So as you can see here, I'm applying my first filter. I'm going to use date add. I'm going to reference my date column, my date dimension, which is right here. I'll show you the relationship that we created here in a moment. My interval is going to be -1 because I'm looking back 1 year. That's last year, so -1. If I was looking back 2 years, it'd be -2. But in this instance, I'm just looking back 1. And then my interval is going to be year. So if I was looking at last month, I would reference this month. But in this instance, like I said, we're going to look at the year. Close my parentheses, and then apply. So as I had mentioned, we go to our relationships. You can see that we have a relationship here made between our shipped date and our date column, because basically we're saying that until the item is actually shipped, we don't actually get to account for our sale. And that's how I can reference this date column, because of the relationship that's in the tape, that is in the model itself. So now we have this total sales last year formula put into play. Go ahead and see what that value looks like. I simply replace it. We can see that last year we had more sales for 1997 as compared to 1998. I can also see what that looks like in a table format to verify what I'm looking at. Clear our filter. We can see for 97, we have 648,000, which is what we had previously. So you can see here, this is 1998. So again, as we select this, we can see last year's sales. Just to kind of understanding that calculate function, this is the filter. This filter is applied first. So it basically takes, it's basically looking at what is basically in the data set. It filters that data set down and then it applies the total sales, or it runs the total sales calculation. Just wanted to explain the calculate function, as it is one of the more, it is your entry to more of the advanced type functions inside of Power BI. So it seems simple, but it also opens up a lot of doors to advance you in your DAX formulas. For example, let's say I wanted to create total sales. I could actually just pull in my sales price here, and this is going to create something called an implicit measure. And that's not really best practice, because implicit measures is basically what Power BI is doing. So if I hit the drop down, you can see it's doing a sum. I can change that to an average. Implicit measures are not best practice. So best practice is always to create a measure here on the right. So one, you can reference those measures in other calculations. Two, you're consistent across your reporting. So if I create a measure on, especially if others are creating reports off of that data set, you're all using that measure instead of having, Power BI calculated implicitly. So essentially creating that explicit measure keeps consistency, and it basically improves efficiency when writing your DAX equations. Anytime you're going to be making, you need a metric on this page, I would say 9 times out of 10, you should use a measure to represent that. Collectiv, we teach Power BI foundation courses, for teams of up to 15 per class. So those are Power BI foundations, and we teach, or Power BI fundamentals, what some might understand those to be as well. So we teach those, and then all the way up to Power BI advanced classes, to where you're looking at more advanced data modeling, advanced DAX, also visualization as well. Those are different types of trainings that Collectiv does offer. So if you have interest in that, feel free to reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn, always looking to connect with like-minded individuals out there, always sharing a ton of content, and always curious to see what others have out there to share as well.